This podcast represents the opinions of our hosts and guests. The content here should not be taken as medical advice and is for informational purposes only. This podcast also does not establish a standard of care, doctor-patient, or client relationship. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on the podcast or website. And because each person is so unique, all listeners are encouraged to connect with counseling and medical professionals for assistance with their personal journey. All people, places, and scenarios mentioned in the podcast have been changed to protect the privacy of those involved.
Welcome to We're Not Fine. I'm Dr. Talia Jackson.
And I'm Doug Jensen. We thank you for listening every week to our deep and thought-provoking conversations about relationships. Happy Tuesday morning to all people who watch us in the morning on Tuesdays.
Yes, it's the crack of dawn. What are you doing up this early, you guys? You should try to get back to sleep. My God.
Although I'm loving how many people decide to join us for their morning walk on Tuesdays. I'm so grateful and delighted. And we'll soon, by the way, be doing some testimonials on our website page from the glorious ones we've been receiving. So feel free to give us some, and we will put them on there. And you can use a fake name or a not fake name. We already have a few that we hope to put on there. Thank you to all of you people.
And maybe just like what this podcast has meant to you, or if you've resonated with anything that has been said or other people's stories, or we'd love to hear what you guys think.
So I want to make like two comments. One is I'm noticing the screen and I have green on. And the last time I wore green, my dear friend from high school, Kelly, you know who you are, said I was wearing Painesville Bulldog green. So, which is where we grew up. Yeah, we had green and white as our school colors. So, Kelly, I am wearing this green for you today.
Go Bulldogs!
School spirit. Kelly is my fellow friendliest of the senior class.
I'm surprised that it wasn't like best dimples of senior year or something.
I can't remember if Kelly had dimples or not, but when we see each other again, because we're going to recreate our picture from high school 40 years later.
Wait, Doug, remind me, were you the prom king, homecoming king?
No. So what? Kelly and I were homecoming king and queen candidates.
Oh, you were candidates.
We were just candidates, and yet we have decided, I think, that we won anyway.
Yeah,
and
you should
Kelly,
have
feel
won.
free to comment on this podcast and tell me if I'm accurate that we needed a frickin' recount. But anyway, we love each other and we love ourselves, which kind of brings us to our topic today, but I can't wait to talk about it. But I also want to say, like, in Minnesota, where Talia and I live, the season has gone from a 30-degree day to an 80-degree day in the same week. So we're having kind of this whiplash.
It is whiplash. I'm very challenged wardrobally because I feel like the second it hit 87 degrees, I was like out with everything winter, and now I have nothing but like tank tops and shorts in my wardrobe, and I was so mad when I woke up this morning after it was like 90 degrees and I looked outside and I literally what the bleeped, because it's white. What is that stuff? I refuse.
But you know, it doesn't last at this point of year and in the year. And so I'm kind of excited because I like the crispness when it comes in the fall, and I like the last few drips of it. And I love rainy weather. It's my absolute favorite, as people know. So I'm kind of excited for all of it. I don't love the heat, though.
Different materials. Yeah, I'm a Mediterranean people. I do not enjoy, you know what? I love the first 3 weeks of winter, and that's
I do too. Through the holidays for me. Yep.
The last 14 months of winter in Minnesota are really challenging for me every year.
Well, and it's interesting too, right? Because I don't love the sweltering heat at all. It kind of downs my mood and energy level, but the spring and fall, I am prime. So
I love the spring and fall as well.
Yeah, and it's really spring. I mean, let's face it. Bulbs are coming up. Hockey playoff season is coming up. Cannot wait.
I know. I mean, spring is kind of ugly in Minnesota, but it is the most joyful of the seasons. People are like coming out of the woodwork right now, and it's really fun. You just feel this communal spaz attack happening.
I also, and I may have been talking about this on a previous episode, but I have been over these last few years, and I'm not 20 anymore, much to everyone's surprise. I'm not 20.
What?
I know. Can you believe it? But I'm not 20 anymore. And so over the course of these last few years, my seasonal experience has not been as great. Like I'm finding myself a little bit more impacted in February, in particular late January. Not loving it. But I'll tell you, when this new season is upon us, my energy goes up, which you can probably tell from this podcast episode already. My energy goes up. I start dancing a little bit more around the house. I go outside and I just kind of take it in.
I thought that was your energy drink that you're guzzling.
Well, I don't know where it is. Did you steal it because you didn't want me to take it anymore?
Well, you started singing really loud, and I took away your caffeine. I was like, that's enough.
I do. I start getting really loud. Imagine that.
What could that possibly be a segue into our fourth and final part of the cluster B, dramatic and erratic personality disorders? And Doug is going to model for us today.
Actually, Talia, I don't model just today. I model almost every day. And I must say that when you can spit out your glass of water.
I just dribbly droobed.
I'm dribbly droobed. So I did find it a little curious that when you said, can you handle the conversation about histrionic personality? I'm now aware that what you're hoping is that I read through the symptoms or I talk about this and I'm self-reflective on how many of these criteria actually are met by me in these first few minutes.
This might be the best day of my life. I can't wait to see how this all plays out. It was not premeditated. It's just pure luck.
I do not believe that. I think you are premeditated and very purposeful about wanting people to I want you to drink water though the whole time so that it spews out toward the camera.
That's my drinking problem. I'll model that.
So a lot of us, by the way, and this is the last, as Talia said, the last of our series on personality disorders in cluster B, as we'll call it in the diagnostic manual. But I will tell you that and I'm laughing a little bit, I have shared many times that as we go through these personality disorders in like clinical class, it was like, okay, I think I have something in every one of these categories. This one might be a little bit more pointed, except that some of it, I just want to clarify, does not fit. Yeah, you can bat your eyes as much as you want, beautiful. It's not going to influence me. Thank you.
You know what? But I will say that, like, histrionic is also very charming and interesting if it isn't, like, completely overpowering others and over the top and people are not embarrassing themselves at the expense of self and others.
Okay, I'm just going to say, I have embarrassed people. Mike, I see you. You're on the camera hiding behind your note thing that I bought you, by the way. So, here's what I want to say about that. I don't think, I have chatted with this about you. Like, when we go out in public, like to the coffee shop at the end,
that's right.
You're like, excuse me, could I order a coffee when Doug stops talking for a second or flirting or whatever I do? Because I do that.
That's right. I have to leave a lot of space for you to like take in the adoration and worship of an entire room of people. It just takes a few minutes. It's quite enjoyable.
Does it?
For all of us.
That's the whole thing that I want to say. Like, you enjoy me in my...
I do.
In my tendencies. We're going to trace.
I do.
Whatever we're going to call them.
I enjoy you and your tendencies. And also, sometimes I feel like I am not able to... Like, you hook people in and you're like, by the way... We're recording a podcast right down the street. Hey, my name's Doug. I've got dimples. Hey,
I never say I have dimples. That is a nickname that I get frequently, though, because somehow they're deep. So my nickname at the end of the street is Dimples when we walk in.
That's true.
But as we walked in today, the lovely, lovely owner of the coffee shop said, I just listened to your episode.
I know. But that was because of you. Do you see? Because I'm so unhistrionic that nobody knows that they could be listening to this awesome podcast because I don't really talk about it. I'm like, can I just have a small vanilla latte? Please.
And no, I am not that person. And then, you kind of turn around and either people in line behind you that have been waiting for 5 minutes are either smiling or incredibly agitated with.
That's right. Let me ask you this, just randomly asking for a friend, but is that often your experience in the world?
Is often my what experience?
Like that people are either delighted or irritated?
So I'm going to, we'll talk about what this is, by the way, because we're kind of like feeding into this without it. I will tell you something. And I say this with great humility. I don't find oftentimes people annoyed by me. I have amazing friends. The groups that I hang out with love this part of who I am. My kids, however, are not all that thrilled with their dad being like, "Hey, I'm here." But my older daughter is well known for inviting friends to dinner in LA when we go out to dinner. And she'd be like,
friends love you.
Okay, watch the show that's about to happen.
Yes.
And I remember one time we were at my favorite place called the Water Grill in Santa Monica. And there were like maybe 15 people surrounding the table and talking with us. And my daughter had brought one of her film friends with, Casey. And Casey was horrified. He's like, "What's going on here? Why are these people hovering around us?" She said, "Well, welcome to my dad." So there's pluses and minuses. I think if it's always on, my kids are like, "Can you just back away for a second and let me have my life?" Because I tend to be who I am no matter what. However, I'm also going to own that I'm not always like this. I know that's not true. I'm always like this. But I don't meet the criteria. So let's go through the criteria.
Yes. And what are we talking about, fine
We're
young
talking
gentlemen?
about histrionic personality disorder.
Dun, dun, dun.
So, these people... You're like opening the curtains, and there's a picture of Doug.
I'm so excited. I'm going to do some deep breathing. And I'm going to like really be so calm and casual about this. And we're just going to keep moving.
I just want to say this, though. I was a shy boy growing up. I really was. And then I slowly came out of my shell, and really enjoy life. And I love living this life. And I love the people in my life. And I love loving the people in my life, including you, my dear. So I think
that's what makes this not a personality disorder, but like a healthy manifestation of you being you, but really loud. You being you at full volume.
Oh, boy.
But it's coming from this place of like, I love who I am and I want to model that, like just being really comfortable in my own skin.
I will tell you, Talia, that is what I hope. And that is how it feels. Like I love loving the people in my life as well. I love hard. I play hard. I work hard. And I love hard. Anyway, everyone knows that who's in my life, by the way.
Well, and we're also going to get into that in the next episode when I get to tell you all about the Enneagram. And because it's also some of that is your type in the Enneagram.
I know.
I
love my type. So let's go through some criteria for a second. And I am going to read this a little bit because I want to make sure I cover it. But histrionic people are uncomfortable when they're not the center of attention. Are you gagging?
I'm holding my breath.
Seductive or provocative behavior, which is oftentimes flirting. Flirting, even whether or not you're sexually attracted to people. I see you trying to hide your face. Shifting and shallow emotions, which, by the way, I do not have.
That's not you. That is not
me
you.
At all.
Congratulations.
Is that worth a congratulations to not have that?
I'm not sure.
Use this appearance to draw attention. Anyway, impressionistic and vague speech. I don't think that's true at all.
I don't even know what that means. What does that mean?
That's a really great question.
Like, is it like storytelling in a way that like is vague or doesn't make sense? Maybe?
Absolutely, I think so too. Or not very specific or direct in speech. So like not owning what you really think because you are trying to avoid having to like be accountable or having to be real because you're being so exaggerated.
That tracks.
Dramatic or exaggerated emotions, which I don't think I'm dramatic, but I am a very, very emotional. I'm sorry, ma'am. Are you lowering your glasses?
No, I had like this weird tick in my eye.
Did you?
Happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
Suggestible or easily influenced by others? Absolutely
That's
not.
not you.
I
That's
am
not
riding my own ride in this life. So that's not it. Considers relationships more intimate than they are? Also not true. I am so grateful to know. Are you pensive about that? Are you considering whether that's true? Really?
Yes, but also like I don't need to be your therapist. Like this doesn't need to be that.
I don't know where that would apply. I think my relationships are real. I do.
That's not what I was thinking. What I was pensive about, if we're gonna like completely go there, what I'm pensive about isn't like if you think it's more than it is, it's that you dive so fast into intimacy, not sexually necessarily, but also maybe, but you dive so fast into like literally you were back to back in a steak restaurant with some guy. And then you're like, oh my God, we both are bald with a beard. And then this guy, within 25 seconds, tells you his entire life story, how he left his wife for his secretary and that his son was right there. And it's like that. So it's not like it's fake. It's that you can create that kind of intimacy within 20 seconds. Whereas like, that's not me at all.
Yeah, my children, and I don't know that this is problematic because I really do care when I ask people questions or I ask about, their life or whatnot. I really do mean it. My kids, though, will be horrified that if we're out at a restaurant and the server doesn't look like they're doing okay, I'll say, "Are you doing okay?" And within a second, either people will start crying or disclosing what's going on. And my older specifically will kick me. My younger will ignore me and be like, "That's just my dad. That's how he does things."
So cute.
Yeah, I have had many people respond to like, "What the hell is that magic?" So I love the openness of people. I really do. So I think there's not the criteria, and I'm going to own it. I think and it speaks to something we've talked about every episode. Like we all have some of these traits, and there's no way to avoid it.
Doug, that was like my favorite thing that you said in the last episode was like, I've got traits of all over the place, which is so great. Me too. Me too. And especially like going through grad school and also like my beautiful, lovely mom has lots of traits of like all the exciting, erratic and dramatic, right? And so also just thinking about like, oh, am I like that? Do I do that? How does that affect me?
But I will say, of all personality like disorders, I'm going to own that I meet the most in this category. I mean, it really describes what I think a lot of people experience. But Talia, it's really interesting. I'll tell you something, and I do believe people are honest with me about it. I think most of my friends just love this part of me. Like when we go to a Boston Bruins game with my dearest friends in Boston, I am the person that, if the Wild gets a goal against the Bruins, I'll fist bump the people behind me. They'll, of course, all give me the finger. But inevitably, we're hugging by the time we leave the studio or the stadium because – I love the fans out there, but initially people don't know how to respond to me. But it's kind of non-threatening because it's real.
But do you love that experience that like
I
people
love it
to make of you? Yeah.
Oh my God, I just love it. I remember we were at the Bruins game last fall, and I like fist bumped a bunch of people, and they're like, "Fuck you!"
But you love it. You love it.
Loved it, and knew that by the time, and we lost in overtime through a shootout. We lost in overtime. It wasn't a shootout, and so we're like walking out, and they're like, "Oh, you want a fist bump now?" And I said, "I do." Because I love the Bruins as well. Brad Marchand, my favorite player of all time, which is very controversial, but I love him so much. I could watch him day and night. But I'm like, I love the Bruins too, so they're my other favorite team.
Love it.
I'm going to piss some people off by saying that, but I love them. So,
and you also love pissing people off.
That's
another...
Do I? Maybe.
Well,
okay. All right.
I think that you love being like spicy and be like, what, does that bug you? Like, that's the truth of it. Like, whereas I think that's where you and I are just like so different in that way is that you lean into your power, your strength, maybe being a bit of like a disruptor or a spokesman or like something like spicy. Whereas
that's probably true.
I don't.
I am provocative.
That's the word I was looking for.
But let me just tell you that, and I take this not for granted, I realize that I'm 6 foot tall. I have some build to me. I have tattoos.
Yeah, you're a beefcake with tattoos and dimples. Doug, what if I told you that we're 20 minutes in and we haven't started the diagnostic criteria?
I went through some diagnostic criteria.
Are you sure?
I am positive I did. What talked about like.
That's right. I thought you were just talking about your experience in the world. No, for real. I wasn't even aware that we were going through the diagnostic criteria. Oh my God. That's hilarious.
That's diagnostic in itself.
Yeah, that I'm gonna come next in the next personality disorder.
You are absolutely. Yeah, when we go to avoidant or we go to, I don't think you're entirely avoidant, but you're a little avoidant. We'll talk about that.
I am.
You are.
That'll be in the Enneagram.
Everyone's. Okay, I'll look forward to that. However,
find out all about it.
As we all know, we're going to move on. This isn't about me.
Not about you.
I'm just looking for affirmation. So, because of this, what we have to do here is we're going to talk, as we usually do, about someone who believes they're in a relationship with someone with histrionic personality traits or disorder. And then I'm going to talk about a case where someone believes they have it, which I'm always intrigued. Like, yes. I own that I know I have a number of these traits. I don't meet the criteria because I don't have all of them. I don't even have 5 of them. The ones that I have are pretty strong. And I love life.
Also, you have so much self-awareness, which is like the key to combating a personality disorder is when you can look at yourself in the mirror and just own, like, these are my strengths, these are my weaknesses, these are my characteristics.
I also, I'm never going to not be a big personality. I love who I am. And I realize that my friends are so loving and supportive of who I am as well. So I've gotten so much encouragement. And Talia, like
you're pretty adorable. You're pretty adorable.
Can you give me some more?
Great.
More.
And
more,
I want you to be the center of attention at all times, except for when I'm ordering my latte. Like, give me 3 seconds to order
when
my
you
fucking
need
latte.
a drink.
Yeah.
There's room for that.
Then I need silence. Did you do everything you wanted to do about the diagnostic criteria?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Let's move on.
We're moving on.
To the box mailbag.
This is a 28-year-old woman, and in fact, this is not a romantic relationship. She is talking about a roommate of hers that she thinks might have histrionic personality disorder. So, this is what she said. She writes us to say, I moved in with a new roommate and she was new to the city. I was happy to introduce her to some of my friends so she could meet some new people. I invited her on a group weekend away, and I've never been more appalled in my life. At first, I was unsure if I was being overly sensitive. I decided I'd observe before judging. Every single conversation over the course of 48 hours was dominated by her and about her. I recognized how fucked up it was when I felt a sense of relief whenever she went to the bathroom or another room. Like, oh my God, finally I can speak to my friends and actually catch up. Immediately after meeting the group, she started undermining or belittling me as what appeared to be her bizarre idea on how to make friends, as if she could get them to like her by showing that she was superior to me. And for context, these were some of my oldest and best friends. And even if they weren't, she says, I don't even know who this tactic would work on. Also, there were constant sexual remarks, loud performative behavior, nonstop. It was the strangest, most self-absorbed shit I've ever seen. The only thing that came close to trumping the irritation I felt was the secondhand embarrassment of witnessing her in action. After that weekend, I realized that there was no way in hell that I was going to welcome this person into my life, but I decided to wait out the lease and unfortunately accept that I simply would not be able to have guests over because of her, or how horrible I knew that experience to be, and that I would just need to set strict boundaries on our relationship. Yikes. It worked okay for a bit until I learned she is not only insufferable in groups, but also one-on-one. At first, I tried to be curious and I felt bad for her. Like, wow, this person is literally never going to keep anyone in her life if she doesn't change. Maybe I can provide her with some patience and support to help her. Well, that proved impossible and a waste of time. She's constantly desperate for my attention in an unhinged, infantile way. I've spent hours and hours of my time listening to her problems, her obsession with plastic surgery, her insanely dramatic reactions to common inconveniences. It's exhausting. She says the funniest part was when I thought about the fact that I don't think this person even knows anything about me. Of course, it's not funny, but you have to laugh at the absurdity of how someone can be so desperate for your attention and listening ear and not ever ask you a single question about yourself. Finally, I'll say in addition to all of the above, there were other many terrible aspects of her personality to deal with, but the worst was the constant pervasive feeling that she was capable of snapping on me and doing something crazy if she ever felt wronged by me. Help, I feel completely trapped in my living situation. I don't know what to do.
Talia, can you tell me at the end of that, can you clarify, did this roommate actually say, if you do something to wrong me?
No.
Okay.
No.
She's just afraid there will be a consequence?
Yeah, there's
Okay.
like an
All right.
underlying pervasive feeling about like what could happen if she
Well, maybe because
crossed.
there's no mutuality and no room for it. You know, I want to say several things about this. First of all, this is where this gets to be clinically relevant because functionality becomes an important part of understanding this pervasive and chronic way of behaving and thinking. If that is so ingrained in that person's interactions that there's no room for growth or insight or whatnot, which some people have, ding ding, or some people don't. I think there's a part, Talia, where the sadness about this is when you have friends, and I have people in my world that have had friends like this. I don't think I have probably had any friends like this, but you know, I think there's a couple really important parts. I always say, you know, if somebody's doing stuff, if there's a behavior trend, if there's anything that happens in a relationship that you just cannot feel comfortable in it and it's gnawing at you, you got to say something. So I have like several recommendations here. One is, you know, do you have the ability to say, so I just want to talk about our relationship a little bit. You know, I've noticed that sometimes, you know, we can go on for hours talking and it's only about you. And there's no room for me to kind of have this mutual experience. Or I had this thing happen to me and you didn't necessarily respond well to it, or you didn't respond at all to it, and I needed you to be there as a friend. So and own what friendship is for you. So I would tell this writer, own what friendship is for you. And say, so I need more like of a mutual experience. I will tell you, I doubt very strongly that this person in an organic, natural, genuine way will become somebody who wants to know more about you. And the sad part of that is they will continue to isolate friends. They will continue. There was a Saturday Night Live skit with Kristen Wiig, who every time one of her friends, it was and such a good character. Like every time her friend would say, you know, I got a new job, and then Kristen Wiig would say, I got 5 new jobs. I got like a bigger jobs than yours. Mine are much bigger, and then I have like 5 of them. Do you remember that character?
No, but I love her so much, and I could totally picture her doing that, and it's just like gold.
Yeah, totally. Like I have 5 new jobs. I mean, it's just such a very funny character. But that's what the kind of funny character is about. Like I always have to have more, or I have to be more exaggerated. So I would say to this writer, you know, the sad part of it is I do encourage you, and it's sad that you are in this situation where getting that person out of your home, getting that person removed is going to be work, but it's worth giving yourself sanity. You can't be around somebody that drives you crazy all the time. The thing that I'm struck by in this is you have to be honest, and I would absolutely encourage you to say, so this is my experience of our relationship. Don't accuse, don't be critical, don't blame, don't be shaming. Own your experience, because that's where any relationship dynamic needs to go. So use I feel statements. Talk about specifically what behaviors are impacting you in the way that they do. I think that's the important part of this conversation. However, let's talk a little bit about friendships and mutuality in these situations where someone might have difficult tendencies. If she can say, I totally get it, and I don't know why I do that, because I do care about you and I want to be there for you. This is about building trust. This is about building genuineness. And those 2 words feel really, really important when it comes to building a relationship with someone who might be more exaggerated. You have to know that at the end of the day, they have your back too. And that trust level will make it easier for you to tolerate those times when she's all over the place about herself, unable to be, empathic or compassionate. You get to say, if you have trust and genuineness, you can say, okay, stop for a second. I just told you my pet died.
Right.
I'm having a hard time, or whatever it might
and then,
be, right?
Like, it's a spectrum, right? It's a continuum, like everything. And sometimes if it isn't full blown, it'll just be traits of. So if it isn't this, like, really sort of infantile, larger than life need to take up space at all times, what it also could be is someone is really struggling to know how to be in relationship. And so, like, there might be a relationship that you're having with somebody where they are talking about their own experience all the time. It's very vulnerable in this way that they're seeking like advice or compassion or attention, whatever that is. And then a lot of us, our tendency might be to just like sit and listen, especially if we are more introverted, especially if we're not going to fight for space, for whatever that is. And then sometimes if it isn't like full blown personality disorder, you might want to play around with the possibility that if you do start adding in there, like what Doug is saying of like, oh, this is something that's going on for me. And if you start being a little bit more engaged, involved, vulnerable, that might be an opportunity to actually begin the friendship. Because I can imagine that when you're talking to somebody who seems completely disinterested and they're only focused on themselves and how your story reminds them of their story, we might just stop trying. But Doug, I love what you said so much about like the way you were describing giving feedback without accusing, but just my experience is this. And what I really need for our friendship is this. I mean, if that doesn't work, really nothing will.
Well, and that's the thing. And I just wanted to add on to that exactly where you were going with that, which is sometimes these things don't work. And sometimes these relationships do not have a future. And it's okay to walk away from a relationship that is not mutually gratifying. I think when we try really hard, like think about all the times that maybe in your life, and we do this particularly when we're younger, but sometimes throughout our life, and I just don't buy into it at all. I encourage people to listen to themselves. If you are always stressed by a relationship, if you are always distressed and anticipate like having to walk on eggshells or biting your lip or having to walk away angry or frustrated or dissatisfied by your interactions, if that's a consistent issue, that's not a great friendship. And if that person is not responsive or respectful of where you're experiencing the relationship and how you're experiencing it, it might be time to move on. And to have the word boundary came up in that dialogue at some point. The boundary needs to be there. Like, it's okay to say, this relationship, I'm sorry, it drives me nuts. I can't be in this anymore. I need a break, or I just need to take a second, or, this is hard for me. So I don't know that the dynamic is working for me. It's okay to say, no, I don't want to be friends with you anymore. We all have people come and go from our life. Please listen to yourself and don't spend another day feeling angry and upset and unfulfilled and irritated and trying to figure out like how the hell can somebody not get this, because it's not up to you. You don't have to worry about those things. You're not responsible for that person's therapy. So, the sad part is sometimes we have to detach from friendships and move on because they're just not the right ones. We have all had that happen, by the way, both ways.
I want to throw in like smaller scale as well. That like if you're trying to decide whether or not the friendship is worth a chance, like being able to speak about the experience and the boundaries of like, I'm sorry, honey, I love you so much, but I don't have the capacity today to talk about this. Or if someone's like launching into something enormous, like your boundaries can be loving, and you won't be building as much resentment and frustration if you're able to manage that on your own with any friends. So for instance, if somebody's like, I need to pick your ear, I need to talk to you about something, or this person is constantly in a state of drama, you can own that you are drowning, or you don't
Yeah.
have the capacity, or today's not a good day, or you're struggling yourself and you're so sad you can't be there for this person in the way that they need.
Yep.
But the truth is it would be much more beneficial to your relationship if you were honoring your own boundaries rather than completely blaming the person for having issues when it's inconvenient for you and then dumping them. Small scale.
Absolutely. And, I think a lot of times these relationships come to their pivotal point when you have something going on in your life. So I imagine that if you had a breakup, or you, again, had a death of a family member or a pet or a loved one or a friend, or you were dealing with some change in your life that was stressful, can that person be there for you? Or does that person say, yeah, I totally know what you're talking about. This happened to me, and this is about my experience and whatnot. If that person continuously brings it back to them, that's not a mutually beneficial relationship. That's not a friendship that's based on equal contribution and regard and love and listening and understanding. And none of us want that in our relationship. So unfortunately, it's going to be one of those situations where you might need to make a boundary that's much more permanent. When you're in a roommate situation, it's also okay to say, this isn't really working for me. I am somebody who, again, feels very comfortable saying what I think and feel. I don't have problems separating from people. I don't have problems confronting people who are homophobic or racist or whatever, sexist or misogynistic. I don't have any issue confronting those issues because, probably of my stature as well as, how I live in this world. But I also think, Talia, that that's hard for a lot of people, right? And so being able to tell somebody, and that's why I say own your experience, and it becomes less personal for that person. It owns that that's what your experience is.
Like, this isn't working for
me, right?
That's right.
So as much as we have this cliche, like from breakups, like it's not about you, it's about me, it is always the truth. It is about the person who cannot tolerate things anymore in whatever way that is. So we also, of course, have a mailbag from somebody who actually identifies as potentially histrionic. And this person says, I think I have histrionic personality disorder, which I just love when people think about who they are. I think I have histrionic personality disorder. I'm a grad student in the middle of getting my master's in counseling, so I have been doing a deep dive into mental health and mental illnesses. During class one night, boy, I can relate to this.
Yes, we can all.
Personality disorders were brought up, and the class had a discussion. Histrionic type came up, and when my professor described the symptoms and the way someone with this disorder presents, it almost felt like a heart sank out of my chest. I used to think that the way I acted was because of my long history with trauma and previous experience with a very long abusive relationship, which I don't think this writer should rule out.
Right.
But now I am second-guessing myself. I constantly need to be the center of attention, good or bad. I am beyond dramatic and eccentric and over-exaggerate my stories and my relationships. That's a concern. Without even realizing until someone calls me out on it or questions me further. I seek attention through sexual relationships. I am very easily influenced. Again, back to the center of attention thing. This is extremely hard for me to write, and I haven't approached anyone about it yet. I don't have a diagnosis previously or obviously, but it is honestly scary to relate to 90% of the characteristics. Maybe my past has influenced this behavior, probably, or had something to do with how severe my symptoms are, but I know something is just not normal. I don't even know that I'm looking to get out this what I'm looking to get out of this letter to you. I really just needed to get this off my chest. It's been really heavy.
But honestly, nothing gives me more empathy and warms my heart more than somebody who's owning their own shit and feeling like they're like worried or they're concerned or they're looking in the mirror and they're not defensive. They're like being honest with themselves for the first time. It gives me like full chills because this is the beginning of learning more about it. I mean, it's incredible. Yep. This is the beginning of a really beautiful path towards healing and wellness.
And I encourage you, because I've referenced before that in graduate school for me, it was shocking to go through those traits. And I didn't have my heart fall out of my chest, but I was sweating a little bit. And then I finally looked around at my classmates sitting around the table, and I had the best professor, Dr. Bill Bradshaw, who was so instrumental in my learning and coming of age as a therapist. But he was very normalizing about it, as I am now, years into being a clinician as well. I just want to normalize. Of course, we all have traits. Of course, we all have personality things. But your empathy and your regard and your concern for this, there were a couple things in there, Talia, that I would say were concerning. Like when you naturally, like this ability, like if somebody's talking about, like I don't know, if you somehow are making up stories to like overdo somebody or be better than or exaggerate your own experience to like connect to those people, that feels maladaptive. That doesn't feel genuine and honest to who you are anymore. I mean, it might just be easy as to say, like when I think about histrionics who have some tendency, some traits, but not the full-blown diagnosis, like a lot of us are able to say things like, I have no idea what that means. Tell me more.
Right.
Like, and I would say it probably in a big way because I'd be really curious and energetic about it. But I also think that that's part of the concern. Like when you change who you are, when you become a chameleon to get more involved with the discussion or make it about you or somehow, make up stories to do that. That's where the concern is.
It is. And I think it's Brene Brown that always talks about like the only way you're going to truly experience a sense of belonging is if you are brave enough to actually be yourself. And then if you are yourself and you are experiencing love and acceptance, that's belonging. And so the way that this person is seeking out connection, I'm sure is not filling up the core. It's like this emptiness. Doug, why, like, what did you think the core motivation is? Like, why are people with histrionic personality disorder, like, what is it? Like a desperation for being seen? Is it love? Is it feeling like they're special enough? Like, what is this?
I would say, and this goes back to really kind of more developmental theory. There's so many different things that we look at as clinicians, right? But it comes back to developmental theory for me. If you grow up getting enough affirmation, validation for who you are, I really think that that's a piece of this. I think naturally, people who are not filled up, I always take a look with people of like developmentally, it's like we're a bar graph of different things that need to be taken care of. And there's Maslow's hierarchy of needs and there's different developmental theories that occur. I love the just general belief system that we all need to get things filled up in our lives to go out into the world as fully fledged people and fully functional people. And my sense of this is if you're always trying to get attention, if you're always trying to get affirmation, it means that part of your bar graph is not full. That self-esteem is not there. And when you finally figure out, and this is where, Talia, going back to like my relationship to this, some of these symptoms, I'm not looking for validation. I actually know who I am. But my gratitude, my full gratitude for my life, and having come out of an abusive past growing up, having come out of some poverty growing up, and some mental health growing up, I am incredibly grateful for my life, and I live every day to its fullest most of the time. None of us are perfect at it, but I love my big life.
You're pretty close. You're pretty close to perfect at it. And I also, in case anyone was wondering and looking at Doug and ticking things off, I will also say that you are so interested in other people and you leave so much space for other people to have their experiences, and you are one of the best listeners, like a genuinely caring, listening person. You leave so much space for others.
That's so very sweet. Thank you, my dear.
And so I'll put that, and one thought about like the bottomless pit feeling. So I'm thinking about like borderline personality disorder, bottomless pit of feeling like twinship connection enmeshment. Narcissistic personality disorder, bottomless pit of needing to feel revered, worshipped, admired. And then, antisocial, there's no bottomless pit. They have no needs that are like socially driven, I think. And then histrionic, bottomless pit, I think, of feeling special or the favorite or seen or just like showered with attention. And what do you think? Here's
what I want to say. And it's funny because sometimes when we have these discussions, I start thinking about, and it's usually because I always think as a therapist now. It's like when we talked on the episode about antisocial stuff, and the guy wrote, like, I think I have antisocial personality disorder. I had immediate empathy in regard, and I could not wait to work with this person. And I was like, I almost was drooling, like, this is somebody I want to work with. I love the complexity of that, right? I am finding myself in this discussion wanting to give people feedback on how to approach people, because if I was in a party where someone was clearly like attention seeking or making up stuff or looked so needy, like a bottomless pit of need, as I think, you kind of reference this phrase that we use sometimes, I would find myself walking up and probably touching that person on the shoulder or the arm and saying, you are enough. You don't need to keep doing this. Like, you seem like you're looking for something, but you are beautiful for who you are, and you have so many strengths and attributes. Like, that would be my tendency. And by the way, if you're ever in a party with me and I say that to you, I will say that to you if I'm feeling it. And that's the part that, 100%.
I love that about you. Yes, and it's like I feel so differently about that. Like, in my office, I feel so like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. We're working on this together. There's openness. There's, self-reflection. But like at a party, I'm kind of turned off by it. And I mean, unless you're my best friend, which you are, like if you are like this larger than life person, if it's you, I just like sit back and watch and enjoy, because, I get looped, and then I end up having more fun too once I give into it. But I will say that I think because I have a very dramatic, larger than life mom who is like main character energy, that sometimes the more like big and animated she is, the smaller, quieter I am, because I have no interest in competing with it. So I'm just like, all right, it's your show. I'll just be over here on the side.
But it's interesting. You referenced before the birthday dinner you were at with me and my friends and family members. And I could tell something was going on behind me because you kept looking behind me, and I realized I was bumping because I move when I talk, which is why I have the microphone I have, and Talia can actually use a stabilized microphone. I move around a lot when I talk. And so
because I'm like a vampire. I just am like this.
And I'm not. So, but anyway, I remember I was bumping this guy's chair, and I said, I'm so sorry. And he goes, no, I heard what you were saying. I want to hear more. Like, what? You guys have a podcast? And I look over at you and like, yeah, this is my podcast co-host. And you were like, can I eat my steak? I don't want to.
I know. But you know what? I feel like you're giving me what is it called? A correctional emotional experience, a healing emotional experience of it. Because I actually am allowing myself to get roped into the excitement in a way that before I would just be like,
darling, you have no choice when you're with me. That's the problem, right? Like when you were went out, and then that guy started talking about having an affair with his coworker, and his wife found out about it. And I'm like, and he wanted to be on the podcast. Then other people were already Instagram connecting with me, etc.
Well, and I always know that when you and I go out somewhere, it is going to be like, oh my God, you're going to know their name, their entire story, their relationship history. They are now, if you'll text me from like getting your I was going to say getting your hair done, but I feel like I've got some questions about that.
Do you?
But so when you don't have a hairdresser, do you?
Oh my God, no.
Okay, well, where were you? You go places and do things, and then you're like, oh, my new person, they're gonna be in the podcast.
So
everywhere
I will reference my lovely, lovely flight companions who were in the same row as me on the flight, and all of a sudden we were taking pictures and they were following our podcast, and then the flight attendant on the way to it was a blast. We had a really fun time. And so
let's just leave it at I wouldn't change a thing about you. I think you're fabulous. And I would say that people with traits of are kind of the best. As long as it's not traits of antisocial personality disorder.
Or that you really don't have an interest in what somebody else has going on. And, thank you for those very kind words about me, despite my flaws that I have or challenges that I have. But the reality is I am curious. I cannot wait I can't wait to be the person. And I would at a party, the person that you would be annoyed by, I would walk up and say, so tell me what's going on.
Yeah, like I would be like, oh my God. But
Yeah.
This is also going to lead into personality types, which is going to be our next episode. So if you have any interest in learning about the Enneagram, that is next Tuesday. And I'm chomping at the bit because that's my jam.
That's your jam. It's not my jam. I'm the person who has fun kind of making fun of it and yet not making fun of it. So we're going to have some fun on this one. I know.
That's why I love you.
I know. And you trust me because you know it's coming from a good place.
I do.
Thank you all for listening. This was a really, I love these conversations. They are never ending. And as I've said, every time we discuss one of these personality disorders, this is an ongoing sort of exploration and discussion. And again, I'm going to remind people that even in the diagnostic world, we're constantly reevaluating the manual and what constitutes. And they've tried to take the differentiation, which is fascinating to me. There's been some discussion in the clinical world about taking the differentiation of personalities away and doing more of an NOS, a not otherwise specified category that kind of covers whatever traits you have. I don't love that because I think there's
That's so inclusive that we would all have personality. Yeah, they're so unique.
They're such a
different vibe, such a different energy.
I don't love the idea.
There are people, I would say, that they're like, oh, I feel both of these at the same time. But for the most part,
yeah, for sure.
Thank you again. We love you, and tune in next week.
Stay safe and well. Bye.